are, and off here to my right, or left, really, for those who are looking at us, is my good old friend. Oh, goodness sakes, Paul, we go back, what, 30 years?
Yeah, like at least we it may be a bit more, maybe 32 years or something. I was looking at it the other day and I found some old photos from Speaker's Corner, and there were all those guys, Roy, Peter back then. Oh wow, yeah.
This is the guy, when I started at Speaker's Corner and started getting on the ladder, I had no idea how to respond to many of these questions on the Trinity and the Christology of Jesus. And suddenly this voice from the below, at the base of my ladder, started telling me, say this, try this, or here is the answer. And I just started being the mouthpiece of this voice at the bottom. And here it was with Dr. Paul Blackham getting his doctorate at that time. And he was field testing his material from what he was learning at King's College. He was field testing him there at Speaker's Corner, and we became best friends as a result of that. Now here you are, we're almost over a quarter of a century later, and you're still helping me out. You're still whispering. You're still feeding me new material on this very subject, which is, for those of you who want to know, Dr. Paul Blackham is going to be teaching IS 508, which in our syllabus is called Responding to Islamic Christology. What that means is responding to all these questions we're getting against Jesus Christ. How do we know that Jesus was God? If God was up there and God is down here, then who is running the universe? Or how and where did God ever say or did Jesus ever say, I am God? And how do you explain the Trinity if it's just 1 + 1 + 1? How do you get it? These are questions that are classic. You've all heard them, but possibly you don't know how to respond to them, and you don't know where they come from. You don't know the antecedents to them, and you don't realize that these are not new questions. This is Paul, this is your doctorate. This is your thesis. You went back to the early church fathers and you studied the early church fathers, where this was being argued and debated in the early centuries of the church, and you did your thesis, and so you're the best one I know. But more than that, you've lived in Britain, you are in Britain, you're surrounded by Muslims, you've planted churches in Muslim areas where these questions have come out, so you've taken it, you've dovetailed it to the need of the Muslim mindset itself. Put those two together and you get the best man in the world to really teach how is it you answer this question, which is probably the biggest question we get from Muslims. How can we prove that Jesus is God? For them, he's nothing more than a prophet. But for us, he is God. So these questions that we're getting hit with, they are probably at the very foundations of how we engage with Muslims. Listen, there are many other questions, but really whenever you talk to Muslims, this is always the first question. How do you believe in that Jesus is God? Because for them, he's nothing more than a prophet. And that's where the question should be. Thank God for these Muslims that they're hammering the Christology of Jesus from the get-go. Who else would ask these questions but Muslims? The problem is we don't know how to teach this. Most of us, including myself when I was on that ladder, and I had 2 degrees behind my belt, and I didn't even know how to take on and answer these questions in a 2-minute soundbite until you came along, Paul, and really helped me out. So we've called you back. This is now your 3rd time that you're teaching this. We've called you back to help all of us unpack how do you answer the question of Jesus' divinity, his Christology, the Trinity, and who are the best people out there in the Muslim world who are asking these questions. And you're going to unpack for us over a period of 8 weeks. And you're starting on October the 20th. So we're talking just a little bit of time from now, Monday night. But we're not going at our usual time. We're doing it at a different time this time. We're doing it at 5 o'clock in the evening, Eastern Standard Time. Why we're doing that? Because Paul lives in Britain, he lives in London, and it's just too late. It's 1 o'clock in the morning for him. That's way too late for him. So we're putting it up 3 hours, starting at 5 o'clock in the evening every Monday night. That will be for those of you who are in England and UK. That would be 10 p.m. for your time, Monday night, on the 8th, every Monday night up until December the 8th. So right through November up until December the 8th. Now, what I want to do is I want to really unpack each one. But before we do that, Paul, let me just say this. This is for Christians only. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you got upset for me for always making it down to Christians, but it's a seminary. This is a seminary for therefore we have to only train up and teach up people who are Christians who believe that Jesus is God, died on the cross and rose again. And for that reason, we can only limit it to Christians. Even though there are many of you who would like to take this course, especially from Paul, the best, probably one of the best, I think the best in the world on this subject. We're going to also make sure that if you do take the course, for those of you who take it for a master's degree, there's a lot more entailed. There's a lot more that is recalled of you. For those of you who do take it for a master's degree, the price is about 1,500 for the 8 weeks for the course, and you get 3 credits towards your degree. Obviously, there's much you have to do. You have to not only attend the lectures, however, if you're in the middle of the night, as those of you in Europe are, or those of you in the Far East, then we will send you the lecture the next day and you can watch it at your leisure the next week. You then have to respond to the lecture. You also have to be reading books. Paul will be giving you some of the titles of those books. You have to also be able to respond and do in a discussion that's on Populi. And then at the end of the course, at the end of December 8th, you then have to write a term paper and you also have to take a final exam. But that's for the master's students. There's a lot more required you for obvious reason. You're taking it for a master's degree. Now, there are some of you who don't want the degree, you don't need the academics. You're the what we call the audit students. And the audit students, if you take it for an audit certificate, then it costs $340 for the entire 8 weeks. Quite a bit cheaper. The reason why you are audit is that you don't have to do all that I just mentioned about the masters. You don't have to write any papers. You don't have to read any books. You can if you want to, but we're not going to read those papers and we're not going to grade them. But you may want to be involved in the discussions that happen during the week with the master's degree students. And also about you might want to be able to read their papers and read their responses to the lectures and also the reading material. So therefore you have access to Populi, which means that you can go and watch and see and be part of the discussion during the week and therefore engage with the other students. And so an awful lot of people like doing that. That's cost $340. But there are some of you who don't really care about the academics. You don't want to be involved. You during the week, you just want to show up for the lecture and get the PowerPoints of each one of the lectures. And then you also want to make sure that you can use that in your ministries. That's called personal enrichment. And for their personal enrichment students, it's only $240 US dollars for the entire 8 weeks. You will still get, like everybody else, you will still get the lecture the next day. You will still get the PowerPoints and any PDFs of any auxiliary material that Paul wants to pass on to you. So those are the 3 categories. Master's degree, about $1,500 for the course, the entire course. Audit, about $340. And then personal enrichment down here, about exactly $240. Now, what I would like to do, Paul, I've been doing all the talking. This is your course. I want you to speak. If you could just go through each one of the weeks, the 8 weeks, what are you going to be doing for each week?
Yeah, and can I just say that about the Populi thing with the discussions, we get into big stuff on that, and I am notorious for sharing huge amounts of material and then debates I'm involved in and all sorts of things. So I really do hope that people will enjoy that and participate in it. And I like the fact that during the evenings, yeah, we have questions live and all that. But quite often it's during the week people think of things and they'll be like, what about this question? Get it, and then we get it into it in the Populi thing. So that's just on that. I love all that. Yeah.
Just say one thing. This is something that all of you must know. As a MAPI program, Master of Arts in Apologetics and Polemics to Islam, we as a staff, that means those of us who are directors and those of us who are professors, Dr. Daniel Janosik and I are the 2 directors of the entire program. Paul is our guest lecturer for this course. We promise, we've always done this, that we will be live for every lecture. These are not canned lectures that we record in advance and then you go and sit and watch them at your leisure. No, we want you there live. So every Monday night at 5 o'clock in the evening, all three of us will be there. I may not at one or two because I'm traveling so much, but certainly Paul and Dr. Daniel Janosik, and hopefully I will be there for every meeting. Why? Because we want to hear from Paul. What's more, every time we teach it, we revamp it and add new material to it. You're going to find that the last time Paul taught this in 2023, he's now revamping, putting in completely new lectures. Why? Because this material moves on. There are new arguments. He's been telling me and talking about the new philosophical arguments that are coming out of Africa, that are coming out of Asia. So Paul is on top of it, which means that he will lecture for 2 hours every night, every Monday night from 5 to 7 Eastern Time. That is from 10 to midnight in England. He will lecture. And then he opens it up to Q&A. Now, this is unique. There's no other course I know that does this. He is there for you to throw your questions at him. And it may take an hour, may take 2 hours until well, hopefully not after 2 hours. But we have been known to go for 4 hours in our lectures. I'm just warning Paul right now because that means 1 o'clock in the morning for him or 2 o'clock in the morning. But what we promise that we will do that for you because this is so important. This subject is so important, and you are so important. So, Paul, every Monday, you're going to be lecturing for 2 hours. What are the subjects? Let's go over and unpack each one of them for each of the 8 weeks.
Yeah, and like to begin with, we get into just trying to understand just what it is about the deity of Jesus and the Trinity that makes it such a kind of electric point of collision between Christians and Muslims, and why Christians do struggle to answer it. What is it about? And often the problem isn't so much, because sometimes we might think, oh, I want to be able to deal with Muslims, but one of the things we're going to discover is Christians need to do more homework on understanding their own faith. Because even if, forget the Muslims for a minute, even if I say to Christians sometimes, forget people attacking this, can you just explain it to me now with no pressure, no antagonism, no hostile questions? Can you do it? And often no. And the question is, why is it so difficult? Why has that happened? So we're going to look at all of that, and then just questions that seem basic, but they're important, about like, is the God of the Quran the same as the God of the Bible, and why that question keeps popping up and loads of people get muddled about it. But there's no need to be muddled about that. That's important. So we need to get into that, and we're just going to initially just like allow this wall of questions that Muslims have. We're just going to list them, and just and I love that, because I always say the greatest theological lecturers or tutors I've ever had are those Muslims from Speaker's Corner and all the places I've lived, because they ask me the questions I don't want to be asked sometimes. They go, what about this? What about this? And that's good, because then to get the answer, we have to think. We have to go to the Bible. We have to go deep. And because of that, they've enriched me immensely. They've made me a much stronger Christian than I would have been. So I love them for that. And that's why so that's week 1. And then in week 2, what we're going to do is dig deeper into that and say, what do Muslims say about Jesus? What's their view of Jesus? And how do they understand the Trinity? Because sometimes I meet people who reject the Trinity, but they do understand the Trinity correctly. They'll tell me, this is what Christians believe. And I'm like, yeah, that is what Christians believe. And then they tell me why they don't believe it. But is that what happens with Muslims? Do they know really? You would think after this amount of like hundreds and hundreds of years, over 1,000 years, surely they know what the Trinity is if they're going to reject it. Well, we're going to find out. We'll dig into that, and we'll see that no, they don't really understand it, and what they have in their mind does not correspond to what we believe. And we'll see that with new things, like just as much as ever. Some of these philosophical objections, particularly coming out of Nigeria, but other parts of the world, what do they think the Trinity is? So we'll get into all that and compare and look at some of the traditions in Islam and their philosophical assumptions. So by then, you're probably, if you're on the course, you'll be like, oh, This is an impossible. How are we going to overcome all this? Because we'll have just allowed ourselves to be hit with it. We want the hardest questions we can find. And that's what we'll have done for the first 2 weeks and dug deep into that. So then when we get to week 3, we're ready for the fight back. This is when we go, okay, now then, we've absorbed all the attacks. How are we going to fight back? And that's when we need to begin by saying, what do the scriptures say about Jesus? That's what we're going to do. We're not going to like come up with philosophical ideas about Jesus. We're going to say, no, that won't do. We need answers that are straight from the scriptures. And we're going to do that. We'll dig really deep into the Bible. And people who know this know we're not hardly going to do the New Testament. It's like massive in the Old Testament. And that's a thing that often people find, what? All our Christology coming from the Old Testament. Yeah, that's right. Because as Jay was saying, when we used to be at Speaker's Corner, would be going back to the early church fathers. And the early church fathers really camped on the Old Testament more than anything. We're going to look at all that. Why did they do that? Why are the riches and treasures there? And of course, you'll know if you've debated with Muslims, often the Old Testament's a better ground to be debating with on. They know Old Testament characters, they're more comfortable with them. So we're going to do that. And then in week 4, we're going to do that with the Trinity. So that's just Jesus in the scriptures. Week 4, we're going to do it with the Trinity. Now, I'm particularly excited for this week's 4 and 5 and 6, because we're bringing in the Trinity with Jesus. So week 4 is going into the scriptures to look at scriptural arguments for the Trinity. And these, if I'm going to say, this is some of the stuff that most excites me. I love this stuff. And I found it incredibly effective talking to Muslim friends and neighbors and things, doing this. You will have to turn up, sign up to the course if you want to know what it is. But I promise you, it's a game changer. Game changer. And it'll even change the way you read the Bible for yourself. It'll enrich you apart from helping you in the debates. But then in week 5, we think, okay, but what about other sources of information about Jesus and the Trinity? Beyond the scriptures, we're going to look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. I know, like, if you're a Dan Brown fan, you're like, Dead Sea Scrolls? That's crazy stuff. Well, no, we're going to find out what's the truth about the Dead Sea Scrolls. It isn't what Dan Brown or anybody says. It's actually really exciting for us. The Lord God has saved this, like, amazing treasure to be released in the 20th century about ancient world. Brilliant Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Qumran community there. We're going to look at a guy called Philo, who was from the city of Alexandria, the academic center of the ancient world. Amazing thought came about Jesus and the Trinity. And you'll see when we get there. But also after the Bible, there were Jesus and his apostles. But what about the disciples of the disciples? That next generation of Christians, were they Trinitarian? Did they believe in the deity of Jesus? Often the accusation is, nah, they didn't really believe in the Trinity. That came hundreds of years later. Well, did it? Let's find, we're going to get into that. We're going to actually find out, what did they believe? And what is the earliest level of archaeology? All of that. What does it tell us? We need to know. And then week 6 is the one that I'm really buzzing about for this year, because this year it's the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. And we're going to really go into the Council of Nicaea, because that comes up a lot in debates with Muslims. They'll be saying, the deity of Jesus was invented by Constantine at the Council of Nicaea, and people before that didn't believe in it. And that's when the Trinity was invented. And all right, well, this is the year we're going to go hard on it, because it's the anniversary. And so with my son PJ, some of you will know PJ if you've done this thing. He's going to be helping me on this. And the stuff we've got on Nicaea, honestly, some of it moves me to tears. It's so powerful, some of the stories and events and the characters that turned up from all over the world. A guy from China, India, things like that. Anyway, that's good. We're going to have a fantastic time. And then if we've got time on that week, we want to look at some of the medieval stuff, because there were big medieval debates about the Trinity and Muslim philosophers from the medieval period. Let's have a look at them. What did they think? Because these philosophical arguments against the Trinity, that's what we're really bringing new in this run through of the course. Because that stuff's become quite prominent in a lot of debates, and we want to deal with that. And that's important. Week 7. In the past, we've looked only at Dr. Shabar Ali and his. Just like I encourage everyone to listen to one of his long debates and listen to his big 3 arguments against Jesus, the deity of Jesus, and the Trinity. And they still are. It's absolute classic. He is, I still think, very, very powerful at the way he condenses the heart of the Islamic argument. But this time we want to add in new people. There's new up-and-coming guys. There's some really sharp Muslim debaters who are putting different arguments that are more philosophical, more abstract. Some of them are even like getting more into the Christian worldview and arguing it from inside and things like that. So we want to bring them in on that week 7. New voices. Let's make sure we can answer them too. Because some of you guys who are going to do this course, like Jay's debated these people, maybe you're gonna, but we want to tool you up so you'll be ready to do it. When we get to week 8, that's mayhem. That is mayhem, week 8. Because in week 8, what we do is we just say, what are the questions you've got? And can you ask, Jay does a challenge usually. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but he might tell you what it is. But he usually does a challenge for week 8. But week 8 is really saying to everybody, all the questions you've got, all the issues you've got, bring them, and we just do a kind of free-for-all, and it can get pretty intense week 8, because that's when we just get into things. And Jay usually issues a challenge to see if people are going to win the challenge for week 8.
Okay. Thanks so much. Listen, every time, this is the 3rd time you've done it, every time you do it, I just learned so much new. And I think the reason why is because the whole debate is moving on so fast. And there are new challenges, as you're saying, coming up. We've got to be on top of it. We've got to be ahead of it. We've got to have responses to it. And no better person than you to do just that. So I just love your exuberance. I can't wait to take it again. I'm going to be sitting there taking just as many notes as I did the first 2 times. Now, in order to take the course, you do have to register. And as I said, this is for Christians only. You can see the registration, the info at ves.edu. info at ves.edu. You just need to email and tell Elliot, Eliott, Elliot, that Jay sent you. And then he will send you all that you need to know to register. Because you cannot take this course unless you are registered. We cannot send you the URL and also all the Zoom. This is all done by Zoom webinar. That's why you don't have to come to where we are. Well, you're in England and I'm in the United States. There's no way that we can come to where we are, where each other is. And so we come to you. And that's the genius of this course. All our courses are Zoom webinar. But in order to get the URL, in order to get the Zoom ID and to get the password, you need to be registered. So you've got a few weeks. There's the right there below you. We'd love to see as many of you as possible. This is the question that every Muslim throws at you. It is the one that is the most burning for them. It is what sets us apart from Islam. Really, what sets us apart is who Jesus is. He's much more than a prophet. He is God incarnate, and he is our divine Savior, and he is the one that died on the cross and rose again. Without Jesus, we're all damned. That's why we have to get this question correct, and we have to know how to answer it. And as Paul's going to do, he's not only going to give you the underpinnings and the historical fabric of it, but he's also going to show you how you can answer it in 2 minutes. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with Muslims, that's all the time they'll give you. You've got to be able to be quick on your feet, and you've got to listen to them, because every one of them has a different area of this debate that they're itching. and you need to scratch where they're itching. So therefore, Paul's going to help you to do that. He has such a breadth, an enormous depth of experience. My goodness, you've been doing this since the 1990s when you helped me out in 1995, there at the foot of my ladder. So we're talking over 30 years ago that you and I were engaging with this. You're still engaging with it. You now are a vicar of an Anglican church, but on top of that, you've been in Muslim areas. You started churches in Muslim areas. You've engaged with Muslims for 30 plus years. I can't think of someone better to take this course than a man who not only has a PhD on this subject, but has enormous amount of experience on this subject and never stops learning and learning and learning. And don't you just love his enthusiasm and his smile? He's infectious, and he teaches as much, just like he is introducing this course to you now. Listen, Paul, this has been great. I can't wait to get started. What are the dates again? It's October the 20th, Monday, October the 20th, starting at 5 p.m. United States time, East Coast, 10 p.m. UK time, and also parts of Africa. Wherever you are in the world, you're going to have to dovetail your time to that, of course. But we want to see as many as you as possible, starting on October the 20th and going every Monday night all the way up to December the 8th. Terrific. Okay,
Hey,
Paul, I'm going to see
thank
you
you.
Monday night. We'll be thousands of miles away, and so will our students. But as many as you can, get registered, come and join us. Be there the first Monday night, even if it's 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, to introduce yourselves, because this is a family. We want to get to know you. We want to see all of you, and we want to see what countries you are in. In the course we're teaching right now, we're in 23 different countries. And boy, oh boy, is it fun to meet and see how people are using our material in those different countries and what the needs are, because it changes depending on who's standing in front of you. But that's why we're here, to help you out, to not only help you engage with your Muslims, but to bring them home, to bring them home to the Jesus Christ, who is God incarnate, who did die on the cross, who is part of the Trinity, and because of what he did 2,000 years ago, we're going to be with him for eternity. God bless you, Paul. So good to have you.
Thank you.
I can't wait till October the 20th. Until then, this is Jay and Paul, over and out.